and welcome back to another episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond. And we are now straight into part two of our two-part series that's all around ERP benefits for automotive distributors. So if you didn't listen to part one, well, stop listening to this one. Actually, no, listen to this one anyway. But also make sure that you check out part one where we covered 5 there. And this week we're going to cover the other 5. So some puns, I guess we should put on. Let's hit the gas on another episode of the ERP benefits for automotive distributors. Buckle up, Nirav, if you've got any others, feel free to.
I think you said it perfectly. I don't think I could have said it any better.
So we've got lot control, we've got how to do returns and replacements, which is a big subject that we really like in the ERP space. Landed cost, quality control procedures is huge as well in automotive. So strap in as we go through these, and I am joined as ever with my co-host Nirav Shah. Welcome back.
How you doing, Peter? How's everybody doing out there in podcast world? Is that what we call it? Out there, but really happy to be back. We've had a week or so of being out of the podcast. We're back in now. I had a couple things going on, but happy to be back and continuing this topic. You know, automotive is everywhere, right? Kind of like healthcare. Think about it, right? There's cars everywhere. You need a mode of transportation, right? What we don't understand sometimes is what it takes automotive companies to streamline their processes, to get parts at the right time, build these vehicles, right? Or get the parts to the right tiers in automotive places. And a lot of moving parts to this, This industry specifically is very complicated. If you don't have good business processes, you don't have good systems in place, you could easily cause issues up the supply chain. Okay, number one. Number two, you could go out of business really fast without knowing how your processes are working, where the defects are. So for those companies, automotive companies that are looking to review ERP systems, evaluate what their processes should be, right? These are all points I think that any automotive distributor should consider when embarking on a journey to look at a new ERP system, because if it can't do these things at a minimum, right, I would consider the choice or the ERPs you're looking at, because ERP, as we've been saying through our podcast repeatedly, is the integration of different departments, right, in a single unified solution software. So when you have all these different departments talking to each other, right, you talk about inventory control, you talk about shipping, you talk about sales, purchasing, planning. When everyone's talking together, looking at a single set of data, single source of truth, if you will, it's going to create processes that's going to help grow your business. At the end of the day, create quality products, happy consumers, right? Better vehicles on the road. So we did our part. First part, we talked about 5 unique features that you should be looking at in an ERP system when you look at for an automotive distributor. And I'm happy to talk about the remaining 5 today, pieces of functionality, because these are all kind of very important points for automotive distributors out there.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear when we shot last episode that it's just too difficult to get to the top 5. There's too many benefits here that we see for really distribution, but more so in the automotive space, especially when it's so important to be able to track, to be able to audit, especially on parts, the quality control side, inventory. A lot of this stuff is just in time. It's not huge warehouses with loads of stock all the time. And it's a critical part of the automotive industry with the type of kind of lean manufacturing where the lines can easily go down when there's kind of a blip in the supply chain somewhere. So for a distributor that's in this space, tracking inventory, tracking orders, being able to see ahead of time when you need to start to bulk up for seasonality, whatever it happens to be. It's mayhem without an ERP, isn't it? We've had podcasts before where we speak about try and track inventory in Excel, and it's a nightmare. So it's quite clear that we couldn't do a top 5 since we started this.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's automotive is very sensitive, and data needs to be tracked clearly. Not just for the sake of the company, but like the higher level tiers, right? Who you're supplying to, tier 2s or tier 1s, right? They require auditability of your processes and reliability of your processes. So if you don't have that and you're just, using QuickBooks and you're using Excel spreadsheets and you're just trying to piece data together, that's frowned upon. That's not looked favorably, especially if you're supplying directly to the tier, 3, tier 2, tier 1 automotive suppliers. So this is a really important point that, is to evaluate solutions that are going to first meet your needs and then meet your industry's needs. So you are, that you have the right technology in place to support your internal users and your customers.
Let's dive straight in then, I guess, into tip 6. Should we call it tip 6? I guess it's tip 6, isn't it?
Tips.
So tip 6, or tip 1 of this particular part, lot number and serial number tracking. So this is really, really fundamental, I think, for being able to know and audit these kind of production lines and where your products were made and who it was sold to and all these kind of things. So let's tear this one apart.
Yeah, this one is so important. I mean, like really important. I mean, think, car is on the road, right? If you get into an accident, something happens, there's a recall. The first thing they check for is the serial number, right? What's the serial number that is installed in that vehicle? From that serial number, they could then look at all, the different vendors that supplied that part. Okay. And then they could look at all the different dates that part was coming in and kind of where it went through the supply chain. And then identify and source which vendor is potentially responsible for the defect, right? Or the recall that's happening. I mean, it's so critical. Where if you're doing all this in spreadsheets or anything like that, I mean, you're opening yourself up for a lot of risk there. It could be that you might be under more liability than you need to be. So to have a good lot or serial control tracking system in your ERP is super important. It helps you look at when things expire, essentially, right? When you pick things, for example, right? A lot of times companies pick according to FIFO, first in, first out, but you can also pick according to serial number or lot number, right? Which is specific cost to your gross margin at the end of the day. It helps with accurate inventory control. So not only I have 100 steering wheels on hand, but here are the unique serial numbers that I have on hand, right? So anytime you get audited, you have full reference of that information. We mentioned recalls and warranties, right? Super important, super important. They're improving traceability through the supply chain. Your one of your customers calls you saying, "Hey, we need to return this brake caliper," for example. Well, okay, Mr. Customer, give me the serial number because I want to make sure that we put it up against the correct shipment or invoice that we sent it to you on. Right. So then we know the exact price we gave it to you. We could apply this exact same, the credit memo for that, and then give you a replacement at $0 potentially. So, outside of just the number itself, go ahead. Yep.
Imagine tracking the batch number. Maybe you can use this information and say, we have a lot of returns coming back from this particular batch number. We need to maybe do another QC process on our existing stock of that batch. Maybe avoid that batch for a customer. And then obviously go back, maybe as a distributor, you're buying this from the manufacturer yourself. You can say, guys, look, this batch number, we're always having returns from this batch number. So that kind of tracking is really crucial, because if you do have this kind of issue with a defective part, You don't want to
Yep.
just wild stab in the dark and just pick another one off the shelf and just hope that that one's fine.
Exactly.
So being able to do this by the tracking of batches is crucial, isn't it? Especially in this particular industry where a defect could be catastrophic.
You bring a good point to the table here, Peter, because if you have the data and you start seeing, okay, we're getting this batch number coming in more often, you could stay ahead of information and let your customers know, hey, we've realized we've been getting this return for this specific product in this batch. We know you have it because in our system it shows that we've sold you this batch. We want to get ahead of this, so we're going to recall, these items in, and then we're going to replace it with so and so item, right? You can stay ahead of it. You could do analysis. You could do trends, right? You can do BI around that information. So you bring a good point on that, because there's not only the proactiveness, right? The reactiveness, which is initially the batches starting to come in for return, but then the proactiveness, where you are monitoring different batches that are continuously coming in for return, and then staying ahead of the quality piece of it, the engineering, re-engineering, or reverse engineering of that, and then letting customers know, right? That to me is a seamless process, right? That's closing the loop from shipment to return, right? Customer service improvements, all that together. I think that's huge. And sometimes that doesn't get talked about as much as it should, especially in the automotive space. But that's a great point.
It's also a really nice thing to have, especially if you've got manufacturers that might not work by batch, like lot number and serial numbers themselves. So as the stock comes into you as the distributor from your manufacturer, you can book it in and it gets assigned a lot number. So it might be that your manufacturer doesn't have lot number tracking, but if you do have an issue with a particular product and you can tie it back to a lot number, that will then tie it back to the PO that it was receipted in against. So you don't have to need the entire supply chain all doing lot tracking. If you do, and it's with you as the distributor, you can say to the manufacturer who might turn around and go, well, I don't know what batch that was. We may have made it in the last couple of months at some point. Then you can say, well, here's my lot number. This is the PO I receipted it in against. This is my purchase order to you. And at least that then gives the manufacturers, okay, so we dispatched it on this sales order. And then from there, they at least can identify it better. So I think with the lot number, as soon as someone starts tracking a lot number, it makes both sides of that kind of chain so much easier. The end customer, you as a distributor, and all of your kind of downstream manufacturers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if lot numbering and serial number is not done right, it just becomes way too confusing. So I think this point number one is a great point. This is one of the top benefits of an ERP system for automotive distributors. Or point number 6, this is a continuation, that lot and serial numbers is included in this, and we could probably even talk about this subject even longer, because this applies in many different industries. Talk about food processing, right? Aerospace, these different industries where lot and serial number is critical. And if you don't have a good ERP system that could support this correctly, it just makes for confusing processes, because everything gets referred back to serial number and lot number, right? When you talk to customers and vendors, it makes the communication easier. So this is very important.
Yep. All right, next point 7 then, returns. So ERP systems have a good return process. There's not much more to say about this. Managing replacements and managing the credit of the original part as well.
This is one process I think almost every company has issues doing if they're not an ERP system. They all have some sort of broken return policy process that is not streamlined, and causes confusion and disorganization around that. Right, this is one of those processes. So having a streamlined returns process is important, because this is really where you could stand out with your customer if you could make the return process easy. And if you could make that return process easy, seamless, and accurate, they're going to come back and do business with you all day long, right?
Yep.
Because this is that whole back end where the customer's already a little frustrated, right? They have to return something back to you because of whatever reason. And if you can make that easier for them, they're going to more likely come back and order again from you up front, as I mentioned.
Yep.
So this is a really important piece to the business process. Sometimes it doesn't, this gets not enough credit that you need to. No pun intended. It's a return. But if this closes that loop, and there's so many branches. I actually just did a training on this yesterday, kind of at a client, where returns, very similar to purchase returns, customer returns, sales order returns, has a lot of different branches to it.
Mm-hmm.
Customers called in for the return. Now the question is, are you going to give a credit for that once the goods come in? Has a customer paid for the original invoice? If they haven't, are you going to do a credit? If you're going to do a credit, are you going to create a replacement sales order for $0? Or are you going to credit the original invoice and create a sales order for the original, whatever the price is for, and resell it to them, right? This is a combination. This is a collaboration between this customer service team and the finance team. There has to be close contact in order to do this type of transaction accurately. We try to always, get the right parties and right departments in the room to discuss this, because this is not a one-man job to manage this. This is really multiple departments. And if you have a single ERP system that could track the order, the return order, the return itself, and the credit memo, right? You can have multiple people now looking at real-time data, making decisions, right, and servicing the customer.
Mm-hmm.
This piece is super important. I find myself as a consumer, and I go, when I buy things and I have to go do returns, if that return process is super easy for me, I am like, that makes my day. Like if I could just go ahead and, click a button, I get a return label, and, QR code, I drop it off. Oh my God, that is like huge to me. Versus I got to call a 1-800 number. I got to send a picture. Then I got to fill out a form, right? And then I gotta pay for the shipping back, right? And then I get some information like 3 weeks later. Oh, we received your product. Like that to me is so disconnected.
Yeah.
And you
This
can't be operating like that in this day and age.
You can't. I think that if customers want the purchasing as frictionless as possible, they want the return even more easy than that. This is the thing they really do not want any hurdles about. Okay, you can kind of put up with having to maybe go onto a portal to enter in your own number or whatever it happens to be, but the returns, that has to be so slick. I mean, look at the way that Amazon does it now. You can just go back in. I know it's self-service, it's maybe slightly different, but you just go on there, you click the item that you want to return, you click return, you get a returns label, it's done. I mean, they've made it as every single element they can, they make it frictionless. To the point now you don't even have to wait for your refund. As soon as they've seen that you've dropped it off and it's been scanned and it's on the way back to them, you've got a refund. You don't have to wait 3 weeks because they know that it's your part is done. So why should the customer have to wait any longer? So this is such a key area to have as frictionless as possible. And I can't see any other way than an ERP, a solid ERP system that has this ability to have a return process against the sales order. So it works on both ways. So the end customer gets a frictionless experience, and your customer service team aren't doing duplication of work by raising a credit, raising a return order. You can just allocate it to the order. So maybe that is bringing up the original customer order, but even that is pretty simple, isn't it? You just put the quantity in that you're returning, hit the return button, it's job done. It knows the customer, where it was shipped to, it knows the original price. All of that is already in the system. Or maybe if you're in a position where you've got a nice WMS system, then you have your warehouse do it, and you just say, yes, this is returned. Maybe the customer needs to put a return label on, which means the warehouse can scan it in, and that lets the back office know, we've now, not only have we got it in and half the job is done, but I also now know that we have physically receipted in the product. It has actually been returned, back to me as the distributor. Huge amount of interconnectivity that an ERP system gives you on the return process.
Yeah. I have a story here real quick, Peter, about Amazon. You talked about Amazon and the return process and how slick it is. I don't know if you read this article. So, and I don't even know how many years ago this was. Maybe 3 years ago, maybe a little more. But apparently, there was this Amazon customer that would buy all these electronics. Okay. And he would buy like anything under the sun. Camcorders, he would buy, whatever. All these electronics. He would take it out of the box, and he would then take sand, refill the box with sand, for the exact weight that the product was, what the box came in originally. Yeah. And then he would tape it up, and he would send the box back, with sand in it this time. So he did this about $3 million or so of stuff and Amazon. I don't know what their return process is, but obviously he got the refund and everything right away. But they caught on to it, I think like a year or two later. And this is probably how long it takes them to go through the returns. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I'd be interested to see how long it takes them to get through the returns. Like if I return something, how long does it take for them to actually open a box and verify that the crap that I sent is actually in there? So a couple years later, they found out. They opened up all these boxes, and then the sand came out. And obviously the guy got arrested, and the rest is history. I don't know what's going on now, but like you said, right? It's such a streamlined process. No questions asked. Here's your return, and here's your money back. But yeah, as you were saying that, I was thinking of the story, and it's so funny. My wife, she likes to return things on Amazon, right? Like most people return things on Amazon, and she'll return like 2 things or like 1 thing in like a month, and she'll be afraid that she's gonna be banned from Amazon if she has to do returns. She's like, "Oh no, I don't want to be banned off of Amazon. I just didn't want to return this month."
But even with that story of the guy returning sand instead, that that's not actually costing Amazon any money. They're saving more in costs having at least the automated process of a return than having teams of customer service people just handling returns.
Oh yeah.
Like they go into these things weighing up the risk. If 1% of returns are fraudulent, well, that's fine because we're saving 50% on cost of labor. Like
exactly. They've done the data analysis around that. Yeah, they've done the data analysis of it. They're like, hey, most people are good people, and they're gonna send 98% are gonna be good returns that come back. Yeah, excellent.
I heard a similar story. I think it's in Switzerland. Their public transport, their train network. They did some data analysis like a few decades ago, and they decided that they could save, or they could essentially be more profitable by saving money on not having ticket inspection officers and just trust the general public that they do legitimately buy a train ticket. So first of all, they thought, well, we need 100% of people buying tickets because we lose money when people get on our trains without a ticket. So we now need to employ ticket inspection people to check everyone. And the net effect was that actually doing that lost them more money. So they went in knowing that a certain percentage of people will jump the barrier and ride the train for free. But it didn't matter because they were saving more money, not having to employ people to check tickets. Like that's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, once you have a good system and you have the data, you could do this type of BI, right? Come to good conclusions and make good business decisions. I mean, this is the whole purpose, really. The whole purpose in my eyes, right? Because you have this data and you can start evaluating it, right? Return reason codes in this example, really good. All the standard ones, and then you have one that's fraudulent, and they realize, okay, the fraudulent one is like 1%. Okay, all right. we could deal with it, right? I mean, it's great point. I mean, this returns and the next topic here, credits, right? Kind of go hand in hand here. And you have to have a tight process. It has to be a closed loop here. You can't have any broken chains in the return process. And the final piece of it is the credit. What's going to happen with the credit? How are you going to give credit? In case of Amazon, it's a straight refund, right, on your original purchase. I think you have like 3 or 4 options. You could do a gift card, you could do, a refund from that purchase, you could get a replacement, whatever it is, right? But that closes the loop on the customer, right? They're satisfied. They got the instant result that they're looking for at the end of the day. So, how do you do credits, right? Are these automatic? Who does them in the organization? How do they know it's time for credits, right? Amazon kind of more B2C, right? Think about a B2B, right? Those credits are a little bit higher in nature, right? Dollar volume potentially. And obviously, not everyone's like a big behemoth like Amazon. So some companies have to take their time. They have to review what's come in, kind of evaluate, okay, how much credit are we going to give? Maybe we're not going to give 100% credit because it actually came back, a little bit used potentially. So we're only going to give back like 50% credit or 60% credit, right? But who's going to do it, right? And what's the timing of when's that going to be done, right? What's the communication, right? That's going to take place internally, right? If you could streamline this process, once the analysis is done, when the product comes in and the credit's issued, right, shouldn't take too long. That time in between should be very minimal, so the customer gets what they're looking for right away. And that happens when a good ERP system is implemented, essentially. So, the customer is ultimately looking for credit or some sort of feedback on their return. Are you going to automate the credit process? Looking at credit history for customers, for example, how often do we give a credit to this guy, right? How come I look as I'm putting in the credit memo in the system, I'm putting in a new credit memo, I see I've released 100 credits to this customer. Wait a minute, something's going on here. Are we just shipping the wrong item? Is it an internal process? Is it an external process, right? How do we reduce the number of credits to our customers, right? You have all this data and analytics around this type of stuff. Integrating cards, your credits, possibly with your accounts receivable, right? So now you have credits and your invoices kind of all linked together, so you could get a full history, full view of what's going on with your AR, essentially, right? A lot of companies struggle with that, believe it or not, right? They see AR separately, their invoices separately than their credits, right? And to me, they should be in a single integrated view. So really what your net AR is, number one. Number two is when you send statements to your customers, they see the credits that are out there, right? You could get those credits applied to invoices. So to me, this is an important point for any distributor, let alone an automotive distributor. But automotive distributor, specifically, they issue credits probably often. Because parts that get returned back and so on. But this process should be definitely nailed down.
Yeah, and think of it from an audit perspective as well. Whenever I've seen audits, luckily I haven't had to go through too many of them, but it's always the difficult bit when they want an example of a credit. And I've been there when it's done as a separate process and it's not linked to an original invoice, or it's very difficult to provide evidence that, yes, this was linked to this, other than my word for it. From an audit perspective, all that closed loop is super helpful, because you don't want to be in a position where you are showing an auditor's decided to pick a particular order and there's a huge credit on file for that customer, and they're saying to you, okay, Mr. Distributor, why did you give this customer a $15,000 credit? Where's this from? Where's the accompanying invoice? And when they're not tied to each other, that becomes very difficult to provide evidence that's believed, I guess, to the auditors.
Yeah, absolutely. Credits are important. From an audit perspective, just to add a few more things to that, is you want to know who did it, when they do it, right? And if someone changes that credit afterwards, who changed it, when they changed it, what they changed values from and to, right? Really important points. Like QuickBooks, for example, you could change things after they're posted. Okay, that to me, in my eyes, I have an MBA in accounting. That's a no-no, because you've already recognized that credit in a specific period. But in QuickBooks, you could go back at a later date and readjust that credit. Instead, the proper way to do it with the right audit trail is to cancel that credit, apply it to an invoice, right, and then redo another credit, right, for the current period. But yeah, when it comes to financial data, you just have to be very, very, you have to have tight internal controls.
Yep. Okay, next point we got landed cost capabilities for accounts payable.
Mm-hmm.
So ERP systems, they calculate the total cost of imported goods, and that's going to be a mixture of a few things, isn't it? It's going to be the actual purchase price of the product itself. You can have shipping, you can have tax, you can have duties. So being able to see your actual landed cost is massive in a distribution situation.
Oh, big time, big time, big time, big time. This is one of those kind of right at the top. Almost every single automotive distributor I talk to that's on QuickBooks has an issue with calculating landed cost. And there's a lot. I mean, believe it or not, there's a lot of automotive parts that come out of China, right? Containers, and containers and containers, right? So distributors will buy parts through China through containers. They might buy it from source from multiple vendors in China, so that one container may include multiple POs. They'll receive in that PO, and then they'll get this bill from the freight forwarding company. It costs $750, to bring that container to their dock, right? So now they have to take that $750. Yeah, can they expense it? Sure. GAAP principles is telling them that they should capitalize that, put that on put that on your balance sheet against your inventory, and when you sell it, right, you start recognizing that on a per usage basis, essentially. So the important piece of that is that they need to get a true margin. So when you look at cost of sales, they are taking that inventory, then they're taking that shipping that's bundled together, we call landed cost, as a single layer for that inventory layer, and then it gets sold, and it just keeps going through the process, the proper accounting flow. But landed cost is so important, because if not done right, you're not going to get true margins. You're not really going to understand, right? Should we be increasing our price to our customers, right? Because the true calculation for landed cost should include, right, freight, duties, and taxes.
Yep.
Okay, these three different items. Now, some you may just do taxes, and taxes may be expensed, but like freight and duties, that should be part of landed cost. Okay, and improves the accuracy, because you're not buying that whatever automotive part you're buying. Let's say you're buying a steering wheel. I don't know, steering wheel, or you're buying a stick shift knob, right? And let's say you're buying it for 50. Yeah, there you go. And you're buying it for 50 cents, right? That's the price the vendor is giving you. But if you actually cut the freight for how many pieces you're buying, let's say you're buying 100 of these things and you're getting charged $700, right? You're paying 70 cents a piece on freight.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to add that up. So you're actually getting it for a little bit more than what you're paying the vendor. So you got to think about that. Like, what is my true cost that I'm buying it for? And that's going to help you, look at your margins at the end of the day. So landed cost capabilities are huge. QuickBooks doesn't do it very well. A true ERP system that's integrated with finance and inventory control and warehousing processes is going to have really, really good landed cost capabilities.
Yeah. And I guess there's other ones, because you might have some costs as well in your own location for when you receive in goods. Maybe you want to track the cost of splitting those pallets down. Maybe you have an internal QC. You might be buying finished goods in, but maybe that's coming in and it needs to go and be routed through a different process where it goes through your own internal QC. Or maybe there's some supplementary manufacturing where you might be putting on your own branding, you might be doing your own kind of printing onto the boxes, maybe you're reboxing or splitting boxes down. So there's costs there as well, and to be able to see those and say, right, what is the total cost of this box of car parts versus the price I'm selling it at? What is my actual all-in margin for this when I factor in the landed costs and duties and taxes and freight and manufacturer cost and my own QC process. Like, what is my actual cost? That can be very, very murky if it's not being run through an equipped ERP that can do it. Because we know there's ERPs out there that don't have the capability to do this. But if you're looking at an ERP, these are the things that you'd need to consider as part of your kind of discovery of what ERP might be suitable for you. And we know that there's some great capability out of the box on certain ERPs. In particular, Business Central does pretty well at this bit. I know Acumatica does pretty good in the distribution edition for a fully fledged module that can track multiple levels of those kind of routes that a product goes through before it actually leaves your door towards the customer.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And ERPs make it easy to do it. It's not even complicated. It's not too many steps. Literally, it's the freight forwarding invoice comes in, the duty invoice comes in. You just select the receipt that you're going to go ahead and tie that to, and via the algorithm and the code, as soon as you post, it applies a landed cost back up to the balance sheet. Really easy, really straightforward. So this is a really important point for automotive distributors to nail down, and then nail down with the right software, right, as you mentioned.
Yep. And you're going to see these opportunities then for savings. Maybe you've got flat rate, maybe you've got small order charges. If you're capturing those, then it gives your procurement team the ability to find these savings. And they might be small in places, but certainly over the long term, and we know that ERP is for the long term, those do start to mount up. And then some of these things are kind of the hidden ROI. It's not something you immediately feel, but after enough years and you start to find these wins of optimizing your procurement process to save costs, that certainly starts to mount up over enough time.
Exactly.
Okay, next point. We've got two more left. Will call. So what happens when you've got a customer that just prefers to pick up their orders directly from your warehouse? That can cause mayhem in something if you're trying to manage that like manually in spreadsheets and stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Will call, I think more and more is getting popular. I feel like when we're working with our customers in the Chicagoland area, they're all asking about will call. We have customers coming in now, right? I think part of that is because of e-commerce. I'm not 100% sure, but I think part of that is now because they're selling everywhere, right? And you have, if you're selling on a B2B site or a B2C site and you have local customers, you're offering that option. Hey, come by and just pick up from our warehouse, right? So will call is important. How do you handle will call, right? Because will call is super strategic from the standpoint of as soon as you put in the order, you need to rush the pick or the visibility of that order to the warehousing team right there to for packing and pickup, right, within hours.
That's exactly what I was going to say. How do you handle? No, how does the warehouse handle will call?
Exactly. Yeah, it's such a tricky process because if you don't have good processes and systems in place, there's no way. There's absolutely no way because you have people running around bumping into each other, sprinting to give people documentation or packing slips or sending rapid fire emails, urgent, will call order ready, it's going to be ready to pick up by 3, will call order, right? And that's not sustainable.
No.
That's not sustainable, and that's not the right process to do, right? Versus having an ERP system, right? You could put in an order, mark it as shipping priority or whatnot, release a pick directly to the warehouse floor. The pick goes to a printer. The material handler picks it up, picks it, sends it down to shipping. Shipping knows that this is a will call based on the shipping method, right? They get it ready, put it on the side for the customer come and pick up. The customer comes in, sees that, okay, I'm picking up for so-and-so order. They pick it up. There's a terminal right there next to that customer. They go ahead and process the shipment and invoice all at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. That's ideal. That's ideal. Right. It's the ability to prioritize the fulfillment of that same day pickup. Right. The last thing you want is the customer comes in because you took the order in saying it's going to be ready by 2. Right. But the customer gets in there like, oh, sorry, Mr. Customer, we didn't even get your order to the warehouse yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if that customer's coming back.
Or sorry, Mr. Customer, I haven't got that in stock.
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine that conversation. Oh boy. But yeah, like it's super important to have a good will call process. And some of these will call processes are being integrated with customer notifications. Like if you're really looking to take it to the next level, once that order is ready, you could have a process that runs and text messages the customer. Your order's ready for pickup, Mr. Customer. Come by and grab it.
Yep.
Right. But you need to have a good system in place to even get to that point, to do the customer notifications.
Yep.
But I feel like will call is just kind of, it's getting bigger and bigger. A lot of customers are doing it. I'm noticing, especially through the various implementations that we're doing with our customers.
I see this every time we talk about an aspect of ERP or just a business process. I always start to think, I wonder what AI would do in this kind of particular situation. And for me, this would be an incredible opportunity for optimizing a warehouse layout and say, right, 50% of this product, 50% of it is always will call orders. So you should put half of your stock near the front of the warehouse, like where or where customers come for collection, near the collection point. So you don't want to be in a position where there's these parts that always kind of get collected by customers and they're at the other end of the warehouse every single time, because one, it's a rush job because the customer's imminently due in, and two, you're juggling normal orders, you're juggling kind of the warehouse day-to-day operations. You don't want to be going back and front all the way because of these kind of orders, like all the time, right? So I would love to see AI kind of be able to crunch this and say the probability of this stock being used for a will call order is whatever. Then we suggest that it's put into this bin. Like when you receive the goods in from you purchasing it, it kind of optimizes your warehouse as you go. And maybe things drop off. Maybe now this particular product is still a high seller. So, the data wouldn't show you to put it at the back of the warehouse because it could still be a high seller, but maybe it's never actually collected by a customer. So we can afford for that to be at the other end of our warehouse. Yes, we've got to go and get it at some point, but we haven't got to do it as a rush job all the time. So it'd be really interesting to see how AI would start to suggest bins for when warehouse are receiving goods in.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
AI.
That would be pretty cool, right? Where it could like start forecasting your will call orders over the course of a year, right? So you could have some predictive forecasting functionality.
Or just having that warehouse be flexible, stock kind of moving around. With a WMS system, it's not as important to have dedicated bins because it's tracked by the system where it is location-wise, but just being able to have your warehouse just run through an AI-assisted algorithm that moves stock around, and like as seasons kind of dictate that this is a particular item that tends to be collected last minute, then we start to see it more at the front of the warehouse, and no one's having to consciously think about this. It's just the system saying, right, start putting stock here. It's kind of a self-managed, flexible system, dynamic system, isn't it? Yes, AI. Cool. Yes, it's going to take over the world.
All right. No, that's good.
All right, number 10, last point that we've got here. We've touched upon it at the start of the episode, but it deserves its own point. And this is quality control procedures.
Yeah.
With an ERP, it doesn't exist. It's just a checkbox that you tick and say, yes, that's done. Does it mean anything? No.
Exactly. That doesn't mean anything. This kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with lot control and serial control, right? If you think about it, because when you receive something in, you want to document, okay, received it in so-and-so process and so-and-so condition, and here's the documentation around it. Did we receive everything towards the spec, right? You have all this kind of supporting documentation around it. So you could produce that anytime that's necessary, internally or externally. So, if you have another quality process when something comes in, this is really big, like in the aerospace. It's called first article inspection. Automotive kind of does the same thing too, where when you receive stuff in, it gets inspected right away via a checklist, quote unquote checklist inspection. Then you take in control of it or ownership of that inventory, and it goes to your AP process. But it's all about evaluating analytics at this point, right? And tracking and analyzing quality metrics. Vendor performance. Is this vendor constantly giving us bad parts?
Yeah.
Is this vendor giving us good parts? Right? How can the vendor try to we could make them better? Right? At the end of the day, are they always late? Right? Managing non-conformance items. How do we manage that? What type of paperwork do we give back to our vendor to letting them know that this is a non-conforming state? And then if it is something that's non-conforming, how do you isolate that inventory electronically, right? Through your ERP or through your business management system? Because last thing you want to know is you're managing, inventory in Excel, and someone's put, we received in 100 of these parts in, and you see it in Excel, and that's what customer service uses to look at inventory quantities, but actually those 150 of them were bad. So you quarantine them physically, but you don't have an ERP system. So sales doesn't know that you only really have 50 available. All sales sees is you received in 100, and now they overcommit to customers. And now you're going to be late, right? And now you got to call customers back. So, managing that whole process, closing the loop on that is important, and trying to get more feedback of the type of items that you're selling to your customers, right? Is the most important thing. Like, quality for any company should be the utmost of interest and priority, and a good maintained ERP system, would provide that type of feedback to the organization.
Yeah, and I think in this space, in the automotive space as well, there's whole kind of industry compliance as well in terms of like making sure that the product is fit for purpose, especially this industry. Maybe this is slightly more on the manufacturing side, more on the distribution side, but you're going to be partly responsible as well for the quality of the product going out. And if you say you have a QC process and you're shipping goods with an inspection report, well, there's quite a big difference between having that just be like a template that's ticked by the warehouse versus actually this has gone through our quality department, and here is the associated documentation. And maybe even part of the, you might need to comply with photographic evidence. Have you,
Exactly.
you might have parts that need to have photographic evidence showing that there's no defect, there's no kind of structural integrity issues on the part, or whatever that happens to be. If you need to be able to demonstrate that and provide evidence later on, then, well, if you've got an ERP system that allows you to store photos and files against stock that's come in that has been assigned a lot number, it's again a closed loop system, and it's all there, and it's pretty friction free, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, these are all great points. I think if you're an automotive distributor and you're on the fence of looking at ERP system, hopefully, these different points that we've kind of brought up, brought to the surface, helps you make that decision easier, and gets your company into a more efficient state, essentially, right? When you have a business management system that could handle all this functionality out of the box, takes a lot of the guessing work out. Like, is my business growing? Do I have the right items? Right? Am I servicing my customers correctly? What's my cost look like? You could actually focus on your customer than focusing on bad data at the end of the day.
Yep.
So hopefully that this was insightful to those companies or managers or directors in these companies that are looking to evaluate ERP systems, to give it a shot. Take a look at them.
Good. It's nice to have another kind of ERP benefits for. I always enjoy doing these because I get excited. Often the benefits are around kind of automated processes. And as I've said before, I'm a professional lazy person. So if there's any opportunity for kind of optimization of processes, I'm all for it. So yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed this. If you're watching the episode, you might notice that I am standing up for a change. It's not because I'm just trying it out. Well, I am trying it out, actually.
There you go. Yeah.
I've enjoyed standing up. It's been nice to be able to move around. Even though my back is out with sciatica, so I don't recommend it. That's the only reason why I'm standing up. But no, I might do some more standing up.
Yeah.
Nirav, as we said, you need to start investing in some pro podcasting gear. We're like in season 2 now.
I will.
Like, what's going on?
I will. I'm going to have something new next one. I promise. It's going to be something new. Might be a new shirt too. I don't know. We'll see.
Good. Thank you very much. Another successful episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond. Our podcast comes out every 2 weeks, often on a Friday, so it should be released. You've got a nice fresh episode when you wake up on a Friday morning. We cover everything in the world of ERP and beyond, including some personal development, which we should do at some point, into data analytics, into Power BI, into AI. We talk about everything. So if you are new to ERP, well, hopefully you'll find some interesting tidbits in our episodes and maybe some food for thought if you're going through an ERP migration yourself. And if you are an expert in the world of ERP, then reach out to us. We are always open for guests to come in and talk about all the stuff that we like to nerd out on. So until next time, thank you once again, Nirav, and I will catch you on the next episode.
Excellent.